There we go.
The more and more I hear the song, I like it more.
Right?
And this is by Pantera because I love Walk.
Yes, it is.
This is nice. It's nice. Gets the juices flowing. I feel great.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
What are we at here?
20. We like to roll for about 30 seconds.
Get the viewers listening.
Yep.
All right, that's good. That's good. And welcome back to episode 14. Episode 14 of Backhouse Productions. Our newest guest, Konrad Dahl.
What's up, Coach?
What's going on, guys?
What's going on? So this guy, this mountain of a man right here, I'm wondering how we got him. But so I'm imagining that song in the beginning. You like probably deadlifting 800 pounds, 700 pounds, something crazy with that music just blaring.
It's my go-to.
Is that the go-to song?
That's my go-to.
Okay, so you were a professional bodybuilder or powerlifter? Powerlifter, yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, when did you start doing that?
So I got into powerlifting. God, that was 2012 after I had finished competing collegiately for track and field.
Oh, so you just graduated from college?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and that took me about 2 years to gain that professional status. They like to call it international elite status is what they call it. And then I competed all the way through 2017 and then back injury, had surgery, and that's
gotta be dangerous. Like, are people's like careers, as long as they do it, like is it only like 10 years, 5 years? Like, or are there guys that are professional for like 20 years?
There are some, and there's also a lot of them that kind of don't get into it until a little bit later in life. Mm-hmm. Like, I got into it in my early 20s, whereas some guys aren't getting into it until their early, mid-30s.
Yeah.
And most of them are coming off of some kind of athletic career, may it be football, track and field, whatever it is. Now, we are seeing a bigger surge now with, like, younger kids getting into it, and they're just off the rails.
They're just starting really early.
Really young. Not exactly sure why that is, because I was like, for me to actually gain that status, right, of international elite, I mean, it took years. We got kids doing that now by 18, 19, 20 years old.
What do you think that is?
time.
Do you think the food's better? Do you think what they're getting, or is the recovery better?
Okay, if I'm being brutally honest, it's because these kids are diving into PEDs, I think, way too soon.
PEDs.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think that's one of the big things there. Which, hey, to each his own. That's what you want to do. That's what you do. That's your prerogative. But if you're going to look at it in longevity terms of your health, not the smartest thing to do.
But don't you have to take like PEDs to compete at that level?
If you get to a certain level, kind of just like bodybuilding, if you really want to make something of it, gain some money or some notoriety, sponsorships, whatever it is, more than likely you're going to have to.
You're going to have
to get up to that level, because that's what all those guys are doing at that level. But you got these kids just getting into it, just getting into lifting, and they're like, "Whoa, I got to be strong, so I got to, get on some SARMs or whatever it might be." I'm like, "You guys, you haven't even touched your natural potential, so you're never really gonna know." So I think, like I said, that's your prerogative. Go ahead and do it. But if you were to talk to somebody, let's say like me, who's been through it, I've competed with the U.S. national team, and I would be like, hey, slow down on that stuff. Go as far as you can naturally, and if that's even something you want to do when you get to that point, then you can start thinking about doing it. But I think now way too often kids in their 16, 17, 18 years old are starting to dive into this stuff, and I think that can be a little dangerous.
That's always been a thing, though. Like, it kind of reminds me of Jay Cutler, how that guy just kind of died out of nowhere. His heart just burst. Like, he's just been taking just steroids for majority of his life.
And that's the thing, too, is those bodybuilders are so, they're taking extreme amounts of a lot of different substances, right? And then on top of that, because that's what they do for a living, is, they're taking, there's a lot of recreational drug use involved in that as well. So, as you know, my wife, it was an IFBB pro.
Yep.
figure, you know, and so that's her last year before she retired. I got to, you know, go through her whole prep, went to her shows in St. Louis and New York, you know, and kind of seeing that process and what those people do and what they have to sacrifice. And it's pretty incredible, but there is a shit ton of drug use outside of PEDs.
Oh, they're just
like
people
Adderall,
Adderall. I mean, I've seen.
What would Adderall do?
Don't eat.
Oh yeah.
Because you got to think, right? When they're to a point, their bodies are so depleted, you know, to get that kind of dry, grainy look, and that's kind of where those drugs come into play, where they can still hold that muscle mass in those things and have that dry, grainy look. Is because of that. Right?
Wow.
So if you look, I mean, you can just look at you know, where bodybuilding kind of started, like even just starting with that golden era with, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger and all those guys, to where it is now. Mass is the name of the game, right? So what can they do to be as shredded as possible but have as much size as possible, right? So that's really the kind of only way to do it. Again, is it the healthiest? 100% no.
It seems like the other side of like being a model. Like, you know, the models are super skinny, they starve themselves, but for you guys have to go to your limits to look like that.
And they do. Like my wife, for instance, right? So that last year she competed, she would wake up middle of the night and like just out of, you know, kind of that, your brain is so foggy, right? Because you're in such depletion of nutrients, right? Mm-hmm. So she'd wake up, not even know. I followed her a couple times, and she'd just, you know, get a tablespoon of peanut butter, wipe it off, right, so it was level, and she'd just sit there and just, like, kind of lick it, enjoy it, back to bed. But she was never really awake. Mm-hmm. So it's just those kind of things I thought were so weird because it happened so often. And then once she retired, she hasn't done it since.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting, the dedication that those people have. And not to say like powerlifters, they have an insane dedication too, but it's not so much around the diet and the drug use. It's more around, you know, getting your ass to the gym, and you're going to be working out for about 2 hours. Yeah. Because you're pushing maximal weight.
Yeah.
Right? And usually, like for me, you know, there's different methods of training into a competition, right? There's people that train all the way up to the competition and through it. And then there's people like me where, you know, they were 10 to 12 week, you know, training sessions for me for a competition.
Kind of like a camp.
And then like that week before, I really dialed down to where I'm not really doing anything. You know, I might be going in there just to get some movement and things like that, or maybe critiquing some little, you know, things in my form.
What's the reason for that?
For
like just stop lifting the week before?
Well, so your CNS is kind of recovered,
and
right?
What is the CNS?
So that's your central nervous system.
Okay.
So let me put it in like terms of football, right? So we hit summer training hard, right? We got 6 weeks of just hard training, and what do? We give you guys a week off before fall training camp. That's to reset your CNS so you can come into fall training camp hopefully 100%. Because for you guys, as you know, probably that start of fall training camp is the only time that whole season you're going to be 100%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, you're banged up the entire year.
The only time, right? And now, and take it from a level of like being in college and competing, right, is you guys have school on top of that. A lot of you guys have jobs, right? Now, and technically football and schooling alone is full time.
Yep.
You know, so you got to think on the kind of hit that's going to take on your body and your mental state, right? Whereas let's look at a professional. That's what they do for a living.
And they're getting paid for it. And
so there's some difference there, but I think college athletes take a little bit more of a hit overall annually.
See that? Yeah, I like the pro football schedule, like how they go away for 6 months and they do their own training. And that's why I feel like they're better in a way, because they get to do their own training. They work on what they have to work on. They're not working out with just a team environment. Whereas in college, you're there year round. You can never have a chance to leave. You're there literally 11 months out of the year. 10, 11 months out of the year.
Well, and again, like you said, the big one is I'm getting paid to play a game.
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of a big difference on even just motivation factors, right? If I know I'm going to make, whatever.
You're getting a $200,000 game check.
That's
pretty nice.
Then you best believe I'm going to push myself and take care of myself and be as close to 100% as I can every game, right? Mm-hmm. Now, for college, that's not the case. You got to do what you got to do, but it's a lot harder to be at your best week in, week out, day in, day out. So there's those recovery periods there, like that week off before fall training camp that are so important. And that's why, myself and Zach Peters, we always hark on you guys on, your diets, your water intake, your recovery, aka your sleep. Because the big thing now is, everybody's like, oh, recovery, I'm taking this for my recovery, and I'm getting massages, or I'm doing cryotherapy, all these things, which are great, but they're tools, right? Your best recovery tools that you can do is your diet and your sleep. Those are the two, biggest, recoveries I could honestly tell you, and I will swear by that.
And that makes sense. It makes sense, too.
I think you've been telling me that since my freshman year of high school, when we first met, when you were coaching me in shot put.
Well, and so let's think about water intake alone, right? So the better your water intake is, let's say day to day, technically you can get more out of your muscle fibers just there alone, just being hydrated, right?
So if you're doing a max squat, it's nice to be hydrated going into it.
Yeah, I could, and I can tell you this personally. There's days I've gone and trained, and I know I'm dehydrated, I'm lacking in my water, and my workouts are not even half as good as they are, even, if I have food in me and everything. I'm a big intermittent fasting guy, so I usually don't eat my first meal till noon, and I train in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm hydrated, my workouts are killer. If I'm not, I can literally feel that and know, right? But again, that's something that's taken me years to kind of dial in with my body and what works. And everybody's a little different, obviously, right? Nobody has the same genetic makeup, but there are those things that we do know everybody needs, right, to compete at peak performance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And water and sleep are two of the big ones, right? Because we can train you guys as hard as we want, for as long as we want. You guys could do great, right? But again, like we've said before, it doesn't mean you're going to be the best football player out there, right? What we do in that weight room is to not make you a better football player, but hopefully make you better at what football needs you to do physically, right? So, again, if we have a great week of training, right? You go into that game and you're like, shit, I didn't drink any water. I didn't eat. I didn't do any of these things. More than likely, you're going to play like shit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even though you had this great week of practice, training, whatever it might be. And then, so that's the big thing on why me and Coach Peters are always harking on when you guys leave the gym, get something to eat, drink your water, right? Because that's two right there, your big recovery tools.
Yeah.
And then sleep after that, right? Typically 7 to 9 hours, but like we talk all the time, we got to be realistic. You guys are in college. We were in college once. A lot of times you're surviving off 3 to 4 hours of sleep.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But it's even better, being on top of those two other factors. Even if your sleep's lacking, you're still going to perform better than, if all three were depleted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're pillars to your success.
Yeah, exactly. So, because this is the big thing I always preach is, I don't believe in overtraining.
You don't believe in overtraining?
I think overtraining is a fallacy. I think what it really is lack of recovery. Does that make sense?
So, the more you put in, the more recovery you have to put in the back end.
I mean, technically, because, when I was, younger, when I was your guys' age, I could train 6-7 times a week and just be a beast day in, day out. Now, being older, it's like 3 to 4 days a week is what I can get in for me. And then after that, it's everything else is kind of just crap, right? Because I don't recover as well as I did when I was younger. So as we get more developed, technically, as we maturate, recovery starts to become more and more important. So that's why we preach that to you guys at this age now, because if you can do it now, it's that much easier as you get older, right?
So at what age in your your powerlifting process where you felt like you had to make a change somewhat in your recovery, like, hey, my body's changing? At what age did you feel that?
So that would have been, I can tell you exactly, actually. So it was a meet, my first kind of big meet. There were some like big name guys there, like Brandon Lilly, Dan Green, so, and there's up in the Bay Area. And I'm sitting there, I think I squatted like 630 or something like that, and I was competing at the time in the 275 pound weight class. And I see these guys under my weight and over my weight just smashing like 700 plus pounds. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I start talking to these guys, that I look up to in this lifting community, and outside of other obvious reasons, they're like, you got to sleep, you got to eat, you got to drink your water. And that's when I really kind of started to hone into that. Now, in that meet as well, I remember I was nervous, so I didn't really eat much. I kind of snacked on like some protein bars, but I didn't have like a good meal 3 to 4 hours before. And I knew my water intake was kind of low, because when I get nervous, I'm like, it's hard for me to like eat or put anything down.
Same here.
And some people are the opposite of that.
They just overeat.
Basically, I mean, they just kind of like whatever they can get in. It's like how food gives some people comfort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that meet, it was my last squat. I went up to like 660 something, and I actually ruptured my adductor muscle on my right leg, so my groin. And I remember initially I thought it was my hamstring, and I woke up the next morning, and from my ass cheek all the way down my leg to my foot was black and blue.
Jesus.
And so I was like, okay, what could have caused this? Because my form was good. Like, I watched the videos. Nothing was like, I didn't have any faults in my technique, at least that I could see. And I was like, had to be because I was dehydrated and I didn't have any nutrients to give my body energy. You know what I mean? So, like I said before, that's where I was trying to compete at peak performance, but my body wasn't able to do it, and I just pushed it.
Yeah.
And so after that, I waited about a week, because I was like, oh, it's just another torn muscle. I've had a bunch. And then I wake up, middle of the night one morning, can't breathe. And I'm like, what is going on?
Can't breathe.
Can't breathe. So my girlfriend at the time rushes me to the emergency room, and they keep saying, he's having a PE, he's having a PE. And I'm like, what in the hell is PE? Like, I don't know what a PE is. And so when they get me they send me to radiology immediately. They do this Doppler test, which kind of checks to see how your blood flow is.
Yeah.
And they found 3 different clots. And so what happened is a PE is a pulmonary embolism. So part of that clot actually got up into my lung.
Holy shit.
And so the next day they're telling me, like, you have no idea how lucky you are. Most people die from this. And I'm like, crap, right? Like, holy shit. So after that was told to me, water was dialed in, everything was dialed in.
So the reason for that happening was because you were dehydrated so much?
That's what I think. That's what I think.
Did they give you a reason as to why that happened?
Well, so most of the time, like with blood clots, they're either like you're predisposed to them or something like what happened to me where, so basically when you rupture a muscle, it's like it explodes, right? So just think about how much blood, that's leaking out, and then you got gravity everywhere, taking over and dispersing it, right, down the leg. So, of course they'd run these tests and, are you predisposed to clotting, whatever, which I'm not, but I wasn't smart enough to go in and try and take care of it, and that probably would have never happened, right? But being young, and kind of.
Wait, how old were you at this age?
2014. I was 20. I got to think how old I am right now. 34. So I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
I was early 20s. So and then, so after that all happened, I had it was almost every meet I was PRing and everything, so I was doing really well. And then my last meet, it was in February of 2017 at Knott's Power here in Bakersfield, and the gym that Lord Elliott owns. And I was actually going to compete a few months before that, and I had torn a lat muscle. And I said, hey, can we just push this back? I'm going to compete in the Heartbreakers competition in February.
Okay.
Because it's around Valentine's Day. So he goes, yeah, no problem. So we do that. And I think it was about 3 weeks before the competition, I'm deadlifting, and my legs give out. They just give out. And I'm like, what is going on? So come to find out, I go and have it checked the next week. I got a slipped L5S1, right? So your last disc that holds all your pressure in your back. And then I have 3 herniations above it. So I'm like, well, this is probably going to be my last competition. I'm going to compete anyway.
Is that like the Ronnie Coleman injury?
Not as severe.
As his spine's all fucked up?
Not as severe as him, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. But, I was like, I'm going to compete. We're going to do it. So I was going to Jason Sable at Active Life Chiropractic. And he's really the only reason I think I was able to compete, just kind of getting me ready for it, even though, of course, him and my orthopedist down south were like, dude, this is a terrible idea. And I'm like, well, it's my last one. So, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I go ahead through with it. I do okay. I bench pressed a little over 530, and that was really the only positive thing that came out of it. I kind of had to sandbag the squat and the deadlift a little bit because of my back.
Yeah.
It was just
makes sense.
I could feel it, and so kind of going in, I knew that. So I was like, I'm really going to push this bench press. And sure enough, next day after that meet, can't move, can't get out of bed, can't put on my own pants, nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And so my wife, we kind of talked about it. It's like, all right, maybe we got to do this surgery that we had talked about. I went to 3 different doctors, 2 here in town and then a specialist down south at USC. And he was like, well, let's go. We took a little bit, I'm going to say more of a holistic route, did some PRP treatment. I was able to actually, at the time, do a couple stem cell treatments, which was
Weren't you one of the first? Or
I mean, with him, yes.
Mm-hmm. First at what?
To do a stem cell, because
oh wow, okay.
So back when that happened, supposedly we didn't have coding in California for it, so it was still experimental. Mm-hmm. But I guess that meant there was a way to either kind of go around your insurance or whatever. I don't know. But I was down to do anything because I was really nervous about having a back surgery because they're just so invasive.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from a guy that's had a number of surgeries in the past. And so we kind of did more of this physical therapy route, did the stem cell, and the stem cell helped a lot because some of those herniations that I had, that stem cell helped layman's terms kind of push them back in. Mm-hmm. But still that slip on the bottom of that S1 was still, really aggravating me. It was pinching nerves in my spinal column. And obviously lifting in that meet, knowing what was happening, was a very bad decision. But I was like, screw it. This is my last go, this is my last go.
Yeah.
Right? And so did that, had the, was going to go and have the surgery done. And, he's like, I think we need to you're strong enough, you're young enough. Because at the time I was 29. And he goes, we're going to have this surgery, but let's try and see how long we can push it back. Maybe we can wait till you're 40 or, whatever it is. So, I worked super hard at physical therapy. Not only did I go to physical therapy, I was doing my own stuff. Was watching actually a lot of West Side Barbell, Louis Simmons, because, he broke his back and created that reverse hyper, and, like, without surgery, fixed a broken back.
Yeah.
So I was like,
nuts.
okay, his is more severe than what I have. Maybe I can kind of do the same thing and see what happens. And so I just started doing that, really kind of, tried to really be smarter with, the way I lifted, kind of how, because back then, right, when I was competing, I was lifting heavy every day, every week, every month for years. Mm-hmm. And so, like anything, right, it's going to take a toll on your body.
Yeah.
And I had already kind of, just being who I was growing up and, been playing sports my whole life, I had already had, a slew of injuries just growing up, like we all do, right? Mm. And the funny thing is that there was twice in college, in my undergrad years, when I was still competing up at Chico State, I threw my back out throwing the hammer.
So you're like susceptible to back injuries.
But that's where it stinted, right? Because if you think about throwing, especially hammer, you're trying to create as much speed and maximal force on this implement to release it, right? Because you want to throw it far.
Yeah.
And, if you think about it, you kind of have to stop on a dime, and that's going to put a lot of torque on your lower back, right? So, like when I first met, my orthopedist, and we were talking about, like, have you ever had back problems? All this stuff. And I go, no, but I did throw my back out twice in college throwing. And, so we start talking about that, and he goes, that's where it stinted from. Because he's worked on quite a few, like, pro athletes, and some of them were throwers. Mm-hmm. And he goes, it's the same thing I've seen in these other people. And, some of them, the only option was surgery. It is what it is, right? But I was so reluctant to go and have surgery on my back at such a young age. It was what it was. So we tried that route, and it worked for a bit, but then I started having some issues again, so we decided to do that fusion, spinal fusion, and surgery went well, and I'm still doing what I'm doing, so it's holding up well. He's really good. I was doing checkups with him like once every 6 months. Now it's just once a year, just to make sure everything's good. Because typically when you have a surgery like that, you're going to have another one later down the road. Hopefully that's prolonged as far back as possible. But
looking forward to that.
Yeah. But, it depends. So it's always a thought in my mind, right? I mean, it's held me back from doing things I used to do, like I used to do a lot of sprinting and jumps and all those things.
You're not doing sprint timber right now?
I am doing sprint timber. This is the first time I've done this since that injury.
Oh,
so not only have I felt very awkward, but very slow.
Yeah.
And I've gotten more comfortable as the weeks have gone on. This is our third week, so we got one more week left, taking us into Squattober.
So, okay, can you just run down what is sprint timber?
So sprint timber, it's something, Mike Tucker, Zach Deckant, and Zach Deckant, he's a strength coach at TCU. And there's a couple other guys involved in it this year. I think this is the third year they've done it. And it's just a month of sprint work. It's, and they kind of do a high-low method, so you have a high CNS, low CNS day throughout the week. Mm-hmm. Let's say, so like Monday, right, we'll do a bunch of different, like, med ball work, jumps, so more of a low CNS day. Then that next day, you got a high CNS day where you're working on, let's say, like, maximal XLs, so basically anything within 10, 15 yards.
Okay.
Then that following day, you'll have another low CNS day, which is like drill work. And then you'll have another low, or you could even title that a medium kind of day. And then that following day, Thursday, is going to be a low CNS day, really, really easy. Like yesterday, it was some vert med ball scoop throws, and then it was some like hex bar jumps at like 35% of your body weight.
Okay.
So super light.
Yeah. So really light. And then today was max velocity. So like the Fridays is like the big day. Like you're hitting big speed, you're doing some like crazy jump work, things like that. And for me, it's been pretty good. I've my patella tendon, as you guys know, has been like it flamed up like crazy. Pretty much just because I'm not used to it, and it's on my bad knee. I've had 3 knee surgeries on that knee, but my mindset, even though I'm older now, I still catch myself in this very competitive.
Yeah, because it's still there.
Yeah, this competitive mode with myself. Even though I'm not going to be able to compete with you guys if we had you doing this stuff. You know what I mean? But it's with myself, and I'm just kind of my big goal was to get through this and be very consistent and do the work and get it done, but also trying to do it within my capacity and not push way outside my realm. Now, the one thing I've kind of learned from this week is, well, this is something that I've known, but I think this just kind of really hammered it into me, is that, if you want to do certain things as we get older, it's true. And if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So this is something that I'm like, okay, maybe this is something I need to start incorporating more, and not just for the month of September.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because obviously the strength stuff is stuff I still do. I've always done, right? I mean, after that surgery, I think it was about 14 months, where I couldn't really have any kind of bar on my back or deadlift or anything like that. So it was a lot of, body weight work. I did a lot of kettlebell stuff. But again, it was all learning experience, because I remember doing all those things. I got so much more functional work from it, and that carried over to my strength. So
it built your strength up?
I think it helped, and I think partially is because I was able to get myself in certain positions with heavier loads more comfortably than I could when I was younger.
Yeah.
So, let's say due to that, right, 500 pounds, let's say when I was younger, I could, maybe hit that 3 or 4 times, to where now this is after a back surgery thing. I was able to hit 500 for 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
And so I kind of really contribute that to doing more of that functional work for, a little over a year. And just, again, trying to do the things I knew I was capable of doing and pushing those things, instead of, coming out of a surgery in a few months and, trying to put some weight on my back too soon, right? Because I think that's one thing a lot of us athletes have, is that competitive mindset all the time with everything you do. And it kind of leads us down this road where, we don't either want to look weak, right?
Yeah.
Or you don't, trying to say this the right way.
Oh, it's fine. Say whatever.
You don't want to basically look or feel like a pussy.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to be a bitch.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah,
I
you don't
mean?
want to look like a bitch.
So
Yeah.
there's time, even till this day, where I get like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes, Coach Peter or something, because we do a lot of training together, where he's like, maybe let's sit this one out. Let's dial back a little bit. And I'm like, fuck, all right,
But in your head, you're like, this
I'm
sucks.
like, I want to push.
Yeah.
I want to push, but
Like you're quitting on yourself, taking the easy way out.
And it is, and this is the funny thing too, is like, when I was your guys' age, it was, you do what you got to do. It does not matter if you're injured, hurt, right? Because those are 2 different things, being injured and being hurt.
That distinction's huge, by the way.
And
Nobody realizes that.
And it is, because I can play through pain if I'm hurt, but can you play through an injury? Probably not the best thing, because then you're just going to take that injury to another level.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Either a tear or whatever might happen, and then you're going to be out for even longer, right? But if you're hurt,
It'll go away on its own, and
kind of on your own. And usually for that kind of stuff, I mean, even with injuries too, movement's really the best medicine, right? But moving within your capacity without pain, you know what I mean? So it's like, the big thing with the whole RICE method, rest, ice, compress, elevate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that the doctor, can't remember his name, that came up with that, redacted that whole statement back in like 2013.
Really?
Yeah.
So that doesn't even help?
No. So
like this is the shit that confuses me because we're always saying like the newest research, we're going to do this, but it always ends up being wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Down the line, like 10 years later, it's going to be like, all right, well, we got a new study that says this. So we're all like just chasing just ghost.
right?
Nothing works.
And that brings me to, I'm going to go on a little tangent here. That brings me to another point on, me and Coach Peters as well. That's all we do is read research because we want to stay up with everything, right? So we can be at our best for you guys, So it's kind of funny because when I remember when I read that and I was like, what the fuck? Like, we've been told to rest, ice, compress, elevate forever, So I start kind of diving pretty deep into this. I kind of nerd out on some of this stuff, and I start finding out they're like movement. And if you really think about it, that makes a lot of sense, right? So let's say you pulled a hamstring, okay? Number one, rest, okay? So you're probably going to atrophy. You're going to lose what you've built, right? May it be through your speed, your power output, strength, whatever, okay? And then compression. Now, compression is something that can benefit you, to maybe get you through practice. Maybe you have a hamstring strain, right? So, okay, let's put some compression on there, make it a little safer for yourself. But you still got to be within your realm or your capacity of what you can do with that injury, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's compression, and then you got elevation, right? So elevation's it's all about the blood flow, okay? So for instance, when I had that pulmonary embolism, when I ruptured that adductor, I didn't have it elevated.
Yeah.
Might have helped if I would have. Mm-hmm. I don't really know. But now we also know that ice hinders your recovery. Hinders it. So ice is really only good for temporary pain relief and temporary inflammation relief. Right? So that's why my big thing, I've always told you guys, if you're going to ice, I'm always like, do heat after. Yeah. Do heat.
So heat's better than ice.
Well, my reasoning behind that, again, I'm not an athletic trainer or doctor or anything, but if you look at research, heat, right, what does it do? It creates blood flow to where that heat is. Mm-hmm. You ever, so let's say you ever get like a cut or something like that, and it kind of heats up that one area.
Yeah.
That's your body trying to heal itself.
Heat.
Right? Heat. So
by you're wouldn't keep creating that same process.
Well, yeah, that's how I look at it. But like, I'm not even a big, if I have something, I never ice it anymore. I try to keep it moving, right? And I'll heat it if I feel like I need to, just to kind of like, get some more blood flow to that area. That's a big thing, like cupping, right? That's what cupping does. It just creates, that's why you get those bruises. Mm-hmm. If that area is actually inflamed, you get those bruises because that increased blood flow to that area, right? So I think that's just kind of, cupping's maybe a little bit more invasive way than heat, to get it to a central section, but it's...
So cryotherapy is a hoax. It doesn't do anything.
I wouldn't say that, but again, right, those kind of things you have to do consistently to get the benefit from it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You can't just do it every once in a while.
No, because it's really not going to do that much for you. Now, if it does mentally, even as a placebo effect, I'm always like, keep doing it.
Yeah, if it works.
Because the placebo effect's a lot stronger than people think, right? It's all about your strongest muscle, which technically isn't a muscle, but I call it is because it controls your whole body as your brain. Mm-hmm. So if I'm telling myself that, hey, this is working, keep doing it. Even if it's not a proven method or whatever.
Yeah, but you can convince yourself. You can get your body to believe it.
It's pretty incredible stuff what your brain is capable of and your body, right? Because your body naturally wants to heal itself. Naturally.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, again, if you really think about this whole rice method and that being redacted and kind of where we're at now with, the best thing to do is movement and, do that movement within your capacity without pain, it kind of makes sense, really. Common sense, right? Because we're going to keep that muscle moving. So now, hopefully, we're going to stay away from too much atrophy or, a lot of these other things that happen when we take time off, right? Like I said earlier, if you don't use it, you lose it. And sometimes that doesn't take that much time.
I bet it like 4 days.
Obviously, again, everybody's a little different.
This is what I don't understand is when you condition all summer, you get a week off and you take 3 or 4 days off. You come back and you're back at square one again, or you got to get back into shape, and you lose it so fast. Like it takes so long to build up, and then when you just stop, it drops straight down. That's what I don't understand.
Just like with everything, right? The hardest stuff is everything you do to get to where you're at on the front end. After that, it's everything just so easily can drop off, right? And that's why I always preach consistency. And whatever you do, consistency is huge. If you can be consistent, you're going to develop 100%. Now, hopefully you're developing, right, and not getting good at doing something bad.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But hopefully you're getting good at doing something good, which is why, you guys have people like us as strength coaches, is to make sure you're doing things the right way. But there's a lot of people, and I'm going to go back to where we kind of started with some of these younger lifters, not, wanting to compete, and they just started lifting 3 or 4 months ago. I'm like, no, get a good year of training under you, right? And then start thinking about competing, because you don't even know at that point, really, that's so early on, of, what you're really capable of, what your body's capable of. And, how are you going to get around, some of these certain things that happen to all athletes, like, if you get hurt or injuries, impingements, things like that. Luckily now there's a lot of tools to get around those things. But that's not always the case, right? Because not all these schools like us, we don't have all the amenities that a D1 has or a pro level team has. So we got to get a little creative.
Yep.
And that can be in the realm of, changing up the workout a little bit as a whole, changing up a couple exercises, knowing, when to kind of lay off, when to push. There's a lot of different pieces to that puzzle to come into play to hopefully, either keep you injury free or bring you back from an injury quicker. But there are a lot of pieces that can play into that puzzle. And that's why, look at a lot of these schools, these pro teams, you got strength coaches, you have licensed massage therapists, you have your athletic trainers, you have a team doctor. That's why you have all those things, right? Because the goal...
they're just so essential. You're with them half the year.
They really are. And think about, I always kind of looked at strength and conditioning as a coach, at first just saying, God, I just love training athletes. And then I kind of looked at it, took a step back, and I'm like, okay, we're a lot more essential than I thought for development alone.
Yeah.
Right? But then also on top of that is, doing our best to keep you away from injury. But again, being an athlete, injuries are going to happen. You could do everything right and still get injured.
Yeah.
Right? So then our goal becomes, let's get them back as fast as we can, right? And get them healthy. So there's a lot of, from a strength coaching perspective, there's a lot of thinking on your feet for athletes, right? Because as you guys know, somebody can be injured on, Monday, then we get another guy injured on Tuesday, another guy injured on Wednesday. So you got to kind of think on your feet to, keep them developing, but keeping them safe.
Yeah.
And trying to get them back from that injury. So that's something that when I first started out, I never really thought about those things. I was just like having a blast, just training athletes, pushing some weight, getting technique down, all those things. Now that I've been doing it for quite a few years, I realize how much more is really behind it, right? And then you got to think, on an annual basis, which coaches are you guys with the most?
You guys.
Yeah, strength coaches.
Strength coaches, right? So there's, I think there's a really big relationship built there. And then luckily me and, Coach Peters, we've had, pretty great careers, and, we've always looking to further our education and all these things, but there's things that we don't know because we didn't go to school for it or whatever, but we can know kind of where to send you, or at least kind of have an idea of what's going on to an extent, but that's why, it's so important for us to be in communication with, your head coaches, the athletic trainers, so we can all help each other out and get you guys back quicker.
Yeah.
And sometimes, there's so much going on that can get lost in translation a little bit, right? And again, that's another thing that's kind of put on your guys' shoulders on, kind of staying on top of that and staying on top of us coaches, and making sure we're doing what we need to do for you guys. But luckily, I think we do a pretty good job.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But shit happens.
Yeah, exactly. And you yourself, you went the junior college route.
I did. I actually went to BC myself, which is actually where I got into throwing. I was initially going to go out for football.
Because you were a fullback in high school, right?
Yeah. And I wanted to come to BC, play football, and I couldn't get cleared because of all of my concussions.
How many concussions do you have?
I think I had 5. 5. 2 of them were a little rough.
Yeah.
The other 3 were, like a typical.
Yeah.
Or 2 of them where you blacked out.
Oh, yeah. One of them I was, bleeding out of my ear.
Holy shit.
That's nice.
And I had, I was, my memory was pretty fuzzy for a little while. Luckily,
no long term.
No permanent damage.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So undecided.
Yeah. There's times I'm like, ooh. Maybe this is kind of biting me in the ass now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know some of my old injuries, now are creeping up as I'm getting older. Because, I always used to joke around oh, yeah, I'll probably have to have, back surgery and stuff in my 40s or 50s. And I'm like, no, 29. I'm like, wow, that came up way faster than I thought it was going to, But sometimes those are, hopefully we're smart enough. Those are lessons learned and you kind of move on, But, again, having that athletic, competitive mindset, that's easier said than done, for sure.
I kind of want to touch on what you said about the fallacy of overworking, how that's like a myth. But when you said you were training heavy weight and kind of your body wasn't able to take it anymore, you had to change it up a little bit. So in a way, did you have to modify your lift where you kind of did overwork your body to a point where I can't do this all the time anymore? It's not sustainable.
So, yeah. Now, so if we think about, if you're lifting heavy, right, day in and day out, and again, I was doing that for, years, and I knew better, but I was just, I was so hungry, I'd hit a certain total, and I'd be like, all right, this is the next total I want to get. So my big push was 2,000-pound total, which luckily in that last meet I was able to hit, I think just a little bit over that, but so I felt better kind of walking away, knowing what was going on. But there's things when I'm pushing my body like that for so long, day in and day out, and, back then, maybe getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep, wasn't really honed in on my water intake. I drank water, but I'm sure there was a lot of days, probably more days than not, that I wasn't hydrated like I should have been. My eating back then was relatively decent. I ate a lot of calories, but that's what I focused on was my calories. So the quality of food wasn't always the best, right? So if we're eating a bunch of fast food, junk food, and, because we're just thinking calories, I need calories, that alone with, processed food, all those kind of things cause inflammation in the body. So I'm sure there's a number of days where, my body was not feeling it, but my heart and my brain were saying, fuck it, let's push it,
Yep.
And I think in those kind of terms, was I properly recovered every day? No. Probably very select few days I was actually truly recovered and my body was prepped to go that next day. Right. So that's the big thing because overtraining, I've never been a big fan of that term. And I've never really believed it. Even when I was, in college and going to school for all this stuff, because that was something that you are taught. You can overtrain all these things. And now we're seeing that that's not the case, right? It's lack of recovery. You can push your body as hard as you want every day. If you're properly recovered,
So you're saying
why would your body not be at 100% that following day? If I'm properly recovered, I can push.
So you're saying you would have been able to do the same lifts if you were properly recovered?
I think so. And I think I would have been able to do it stronger, easier, and more consistently than I was. Because there was days, before my workout, I've already smashed 3,000 calories, and I'm sluggish as hell because I went and choked down, 6 chicken sandwiches from Jack in the Box just to get my calories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you're like to the point where I am now, where especially having a wife that's meal prepped for the majority of her adulthood, we eat really good. So those days where we eat kind of, bad, have a cheat day or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like shit.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Like literally, like I'm like, ugh. And the next day I can feel it. I'm a little sluggish waking up. I don't know if it's just the old age, but I can feel certain aches and pains and, and I'm like, that has to be due to what I put in my body, right? Because I felt fine Monday through Friday, staying on top of my nutrition and my water and all those things. And then that weekend hits, and I'm like, all right, hit up my brother-in-law. Let's go drink some beer. Let's choke down some wings. Let's do this and that. And then the next day I'm like, oh, damn. You know what I mean? You can feel it. Now, at your guys' age being younger, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
You can get away with it. But
it catches up fast.
I can pretty much 100% guarantee you that at least when you get to my age,
You'll feel it.
You're going to feel it. You're going to be able to tell the difference on when you did something the right way and when you did something the wrong way. So it's it's kind of a game. If you really think about it, it's almost a game of to me, I explain it as kind of a game of cat and mouse, right? Now, what I mean by that is, do you want to be the mouse where you're just running away, right? So what I mean by that is, I know I ate like shit, right? I just wanted to get my calories in, but I'm going to go push in this weight room for 2 hours, right? And take my body to its full capacity. And then being the mouse, right? Or I can be the cat where I'm on top of that shit, right? And I'm now, going in and I'm like, all right, these weights are my bitch today.
Yeah.
I'm good. I know I'm prepped. I'm ready to go. My body feels good. And you're going to, in terms, catch that mouse, right? So think of the weights as the mouse, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's times where I explain that to some of the younger kids that I've talked to, when I'm at NOS Power or something like that, and because they'll see me lifting some weight and like, damn, hey, you got any pointers, and stuff like that. And that's kind of the rabbit hole I go down, is I start talking about all these things, and they're the small intricate things, but they're important. They're really important. I think they are. And that's obviously something I've learned, through my own tribulations, doing what I've done growing up and where I'm at now. So it's again, going back to your main point of your question with the overtraining is, right, it's recovery. It's 100% recovery. If you're capable of doing that and really honing in on it, and again, it's easier said than done. It really is. But if you can do that, let's say majority of the time, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. And I can almost guarantee you that you're going to have less injuries than somebody that doesn't do that. You know what I mean? But again, those 3 big ones: your diet, your water intake, and your sleep. Huge.
Well, what's interesting to me is when you mentioned when you got that back injury and you started doing more functional lifts where you weren't really having a bar on your back and you still got stronger from it. So what is that approach? You approached that differently and you still got stronger from not doing as heavy weight. You're doing more functional movements where your body was able to, bend better or move better. So in a way, you're kind of cutting back the weight and you're kind of
So
kind of
it's almost
focusing
like
on more.
Yeah, you're focusing more on your weak points.
Yeah.
I guess is how I would explain it. You know, like, because especially when when I'm pushing weight, and I know I got a meet coming, and I know there's certain weak points I might have in my technique. Maybe my squat, I'm like, damn, my ankle flexion is not good, right? Something like that. You know, so it was kind of like the silver lining for me with that back injury was having, that year to focus on those weak points and really realize how important all those little things are to you overall in your performance, right? So when I say I got stronger, I'd say I became a stronger mover. Now it took me a little bit to build my strength capacity up, obviously, but it came way quicker than I thought it would. And I attribute that to all that functional work that I did to correct those weak points. So, and for me, a lot of them was my ankle flexion was not that great. I have a rod in my left ankle, so that could be definitely a reason why. But it doesn't mean that you can't get better flexion, even if you've had surgery or whatever. That was a big one. And then there were certain things like my hips were always really tight, so I really started to focus on, being able to get my hips open and hitting a lower depth with more weight, and doing all those little things. So by the time I was able to kind of get a bar back on my back and do some of those more of those powerlifting movements, I remember almost immediately, I was like, oh man, I feel great. Now, was I pushing as much weight as I was prior to that injury? No. But everything was moving so much more fluent, right? So I was able to kind of get back up to, I would say, my prime strength within a year, which to me is pretty quick.
That is crazy.
With a severe back injury, and you were able to get back to that point in a year is
pretty quick, right?
Yeah,
So
really crazy.
But again, it was a lot of work. There was days where I was just like, I don't want to do this. I'm tired. I'm like over it, right? But again, that's where that little competitive person in your brain, that athlete, kind of creeps up and says, no, you got it. Let's go. Push through it. Let's go. So it was kind of, that was a big time for me. That was a huge mental check for me during that year after that surgery was huge. Because there was a lot of days I wanted to kind of feel sorry for myself and not do shit, but I was like, no, I got to do this. If I really want to do this, I got to do this. Just like anything else, right? And again, back to consistency. Because I could have done some things and, been like, oh, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. I think we're good. I'll stop.
Yeah.
But what happens when you stop? You lose it. So that's where that consistency comes into play. And that was probably one of the biggest things for me, even when I didn't want to go to physical therapy or didn't want to, go and do certain, lifts that I didn't like doing, but I knew they were beneficial to me. I went and did them no matter what, right? So sometimes it's not a matter of, going in, and you're not always going to go in 100% ready to just get after it, but it is going to take you somewhere if you just go and at least do it. You know what I mean? Now, usually when you start off, it might be kind of slow, whatever. But by the time, even if you're not checked in, by the time you're done with that workout or therapy, whatever it is, you're checked in. You're ready to go. And I always left feeling better, right? I might have been a little gassed, but I always came out feeling better, more confident, right? So it's kind of a big mental problem, especially with injuries, right? Or if you're hurt. I always tell it's one of the hardest things is the mental aspect of it, right? Is trying to be patient. Because if you get out there too soon, a lot of times you just re-injure yourself. Now you're out even longer. You know what I mean? So there's, we've had a number of guys like Zach last year with his ankle.
Broke his ankle.
And he wanted to come out so early. I'm like, dude, do the work, be patient, right? So there was I think it was the scrimmage he got in, or it was like the practice before that first scrimmage we had this year. And I'm like, dude, you're not ready. Like, just be patient. And he went in, and what does he do? Re-injures his hamstring.
Yeah.
Right? So after that, he comes up and he goes, all right, you were right. And I go, I know, but I was like, but I understand that it's hard. I've been there multiple times, right? And when you're younger and you're hungry and you're trying to move on, to that next level, you want to push that way, and that patience is not even a thought, right? But if we really are thinking longevity of what we want to do, you got to have it. You have to be patient. Have to be.
So if you could go back right now and you can talk to a younger Dahl, what are you telling him how to train? What do you tell him to train? Or how to approach lifting?
So probably the biggest thing I would have told my young self was knowing how to phase myself, right, through, let's say, through a year, right? So, because like when I was like BC and things like that, we didn't have strength coaches, right? I mean, we didn't even have a bunch of the science that we have now. So there was times back, when I was your guys' age, it didn't matter. They're like, push it, get the weight. Like, doesn't matter your technique, how you do it, any of those things, just get it up. So if I was to tell myself then, knowing that, back then, like, that doesn't really sound right. Like, if it's hurting me, or I'm like, I don't feel comfortable doing this or whatever it is, that's your first telltale sign, like, okay, what am I doing wrong? You know what I mean? So that's one thing I would tell myself is kind of be a little smarter with how I was lifting, right? So your body is not going to be able to lift these maximal weights every day for such a length of time, right? You got to know when to put in your deload weeks, right? You got to know when to take that week off. Let your CNS reset, right? And come back, as close as we can to 100% after that. Instead of just push. It was, so for me, it would be, again, I'd say be patient, trust the process, right? So it's like how we strength train you guys now. You know what I mean? It's like we push hard in the spring. We know you guys are fried. We know it. But we also know you got some time coming off to where you can go do your thing, have some fun, just totally reset your body and your mind. And then, boom, we turn around, we have summer, right? We hit hard again. But we also know it's not 16 weeks, it's 6 weeks. Okay, then you got a week off, fall training camp, right? So we know when to put in these breaks and these deloads, right? So hopefully we can stay away from injury, at least in the weight room, right? Because that's our biggest thing. We don't want anybody especially getting injured in the weight room.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and most of the time, I don't really know of many of the athletes that have gotten injured in the weight room doing something, which is good. I would wear that as a badge of honor. But again, things can happen, right? Especially if you're trying to push on let's say a max week or something. Sometimes things can happen, but hopefully, with what we've taught, you guys kind of know, hey, I'm capable of this. I can kind of push it, or this isn't going to happen. That's part of what we teach you guys, maybe not out front, but through how we've kind of, do our different phases through your annual training and all these things, and how we go over usually in the summer, certain techniques, and that's where we kind of really heavily teach is in the summer. So hopefully by fall training camp, we're just full go.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's not that we're saying maybe out front, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to think, all those things, because you got to let yourself be your own athlete, right? You have your own mind. You have your own body. Not everybody's the same, right? But we can give you guidelines, right, and teach you kind of how to do certain things within your capacity, right, as an individual. That's why we print all you guys out different individualized cards.
Yeah, how many cards are out there at once?
100 something.
That's crazy.
Right? So we got QBs on something else. We got the bigs on something else.
Yeah, every position does something different.
Right? So, and then we got guys where like, okay, quality mover, whatever, and then we put you guys on those black cards, which are what we call advanced cards, right? Because based on our judgment, you're ready to kind of move past this phase and kind of step up your game a little bit, right? In the weight room. So, and that's why we still have guys on the team cards, right? Not everybody's on an advanced card necessarily. And me and Coach Peters were pretty strict on how we go about that, right? Because, again, think of our biggest goal as strength coaches, right, is number one is to prevent injury, okay, as best we can. The second thing is if you do get injured, let's get you back as fast as we can. Right. The third thing is kind of let's get bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah.
Right?
Are we bigger than the guys across the ball?
You know,
are we pushing?
Like, I would say that this last game we just had, right? We lost, but we fucking hit hard.
A lot of those guys
we
are going
hurt like
down.
5 or 6 of their dudes, right? And so I remember me and Coach Peters looking at each other, was like, well, at least we're strong, you know, like we're beating them up, you know. But again, that goes to that whole point of we can be a weight room warrior. You're not going to be.
Doesn't necessarily translate.
It doesn't. You're not going to be the best athlete. That's why, like, I don't like when you get some coaches coming in and be like, well, can we do something sports specific in the weight room? And I'm like, you don't even realize what you just said makes no sense. Nothing we do in here is really sports specific. We can make you stronger at, you know, certain movements you're going to do, you know, on the field, but we can't replicate that in here. We're trying to build, you know, strength, power, elasticity, all these different things. So you're more capable of doing those things out on the field, right? So that when I hear that, like sports, I'm like, okay, they don't have no idea what we do, what goes into this, right? So I shouldn't say it's really my pet peeve because they don't understand, right? And it is what it is, but when we try to tell you guys, like coaches, these things, you know, because we really try to communicate and let them know, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. And so if they know that, and they're like, oh, okay, but then they come in and say, well, can we do somewhere? I'm like, okay, so you literally didn't hear anything I told you, right? And that's not how this works. It's just not. It's not how it works. You could squat 600 pounds. Doesn't mean you're going to run a 4.340. The only way you're going to run a 4.340, number one, is if you're just fast. And number two,
you have to naturally have it.
Well, and number two is your sprinting technique, right? I mean, I'm not a firm believer in we can make somebody necessarily faster. I think we can make them more efficient, which can make you quicker.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's kind of if you have speed, you have speed, right? Can we make you more efficient at, you know, running a 40 or doing cuts and all those things? 100% we can, right? But the only way that that's really going to be done is by doing sprints, right? Doing different types of like broad jumps, depth jumps, drop jumps, all of these things. That's going to have more translation, right, to how you're kind of using your body on the field.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's think about sprinting, okay? My hamstring is going to get more power production from sprinting than it's going to get from doing an RDL or a deadlift or a squat, right? So, hence, we can't just hone in on that weight training aspect and not do any sprint work and say, oh, okay, hopefully we won't have any hamstring injuries. You're going to get them if you haven't done any of that sprint work because it's not prepped for it. It's not ready because you didn't do any of that, right? But that's why we do sprint work we do certain things in the conditioning that we do is, you know, to try and help prevent that and get you guys stronger, you know, at those movements that you're going to do on the field.
So that's why the guys who don't condition during the summer are the ones who get their hamstring. They tear their hamstrings during the season.
Almost every time.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm just thinking about the guys who are hurt right now and like their hamstrings. They didn't really do anything in the summer.
Well, and a lot of times too, right? We only have a certain amount of time together. Right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy for us to tell, like, okay, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing outside of here, right? So taking care of yourself, things like that. Again, recovery.
Yep.
You know, those all play a part. And again, it's something that as coaches, we can give you all the tools in the world, right, to be the best that you can. But ultimately, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Right?
It's on you. Yeah.
It's on you. Do you want to take that information? Do you want to, do you want to push yourself? Or are you cool with just being a body and just being there, right? Which as an athlete, I don't know why you'd want to.
Yeah, especially at this level, like I don't get the point. Like what are we doing?
And it's and I know some people.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
Why do we waste all our fucking time just to fucking do nothing?
And now you got to think about it, right? So you're at a JUCO, okay? People are like, oh, you're JUCO. You're playing ball at JUCO.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the percentage of how many athletes continue on out of high school.
Oh, it's less than 1%.
It's pretty damn small as a whole, again, amongst all sports.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty small percentage. So I'm so big on, like, I don't care if you're playing JUCO, you're a D3, D2, D1, pro, whatever. Anything after high school to me is an elite level.
Yeah.
You're playing at an elite level because no matter what, guess what? Everybody's getting better and better, tougher and tougher. So I think a lot of times we have to get out of that mindset of like, oh, we're just a JUCO.
Yeah.
Right? Now, again, I'll never say, oh, we're going to be a D1 level because we're not. But we can prepare you for D1 level. That's the big thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about development. So we don't have the money or the amenities that a D1 has. Yep. If we did, that'd be awesome.
Dude, I don't know. If I looking at the facility that's getting built, looking at our stadium, it could be. You could like match that up with some D1 schools.
You know what? And you probably
it's kind of crazy.
You probably could, but the amenities, I guess, at that point is kind of the big thing, right? Like, again, our weight room, that new one, it's not going to be nearly as big as a lot of,
Yeah.
I mean, even D3s, right? I mean, God, there's high schools in Texas that look like D1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you got to also think staffing's kind of big, right? So if you look at strength programs, at a 4-year level.
Oh, my God,
or
dude.
Pro level, you have.
There was like 15 coaches.
Oh,
there's 15 coaches.
Multiple. And you got to think, what do you guys have? You have 2, really.
Yeah, we do have 2.
And that's a lot of dudes for 2 guys to really try and hone in. And
for 100 guys.
And you two do every sport on campus.
Yeah. And some of it, right, like baseball, I got 50 guys. I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Am I going to see everything?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. I'm going to try, but I know I'm not, and now would that be easier if I had 2, 3 other coaches in there? 100%.
Yeah.
100%. But again, we're not a D1 level. We don't have all this money coming in,
Mm-hmm.
So, that's where we get creative on how we do things, how we, set up our strength protocols, how are we going to do things out on the field, for doing sprint work and all these things, and a lot of times that's also going to take us relying on, some of the head coaches, helping us out. So we kind of have to teach them, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is how we need to do this, So that can be difficult.
Yeah.
It can be difficult for us. It can be difficult for you guys, but we always manage to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you got to be willing to kind of, even as coaches, get outside your comfort zone, and don't be afraid to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. You just got it. You can't be afraid of it.
Yeah,
you got to attack it.
After it.
You have to. I mean, that's from a coach's standpoint too. You know what I mean? It's coaches got to get after it, and we got to attack it, and you want
because everybody's looking at the coaches.
Oh,
Everybody sees what the coaches do.
Well, and usually, right? If let's say a team's doing bad, who are you looking at first? Not your players. You're looking at your coach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like it was so crazy when I had done a couple internships at the pro level. Because that's initially what I really wanted to do, and then got my experience, and I was like, oh God, I don't know about this. I was like, this doesn't have the stability I was thinking it did, and I mean, you can be let go at the drop of a hat.
Oh yeah, you're jumping around.
And And I wanted to, have a family, and that can be hard, doing that as you're getting started with that kind of career, So then I'd gone back, and I was like, you know what? I'd really like to teach and coach again, because I was teaching and coaching at Chico State after I graduated. So they kept me on as a adjunct kinesiology professor, and I was the head throwers coach.
Oh, you were the head throwers coach?
Yeah.
Oh, that's badass.
Yeah. So, that, and so I was lucky to have that experience, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing both. And so I talked to a couple of, my mentors in college, Dr. Thomas Fahey and Dr. Steve Henderson, two very well-known guys in the kinesiology world, especially Thomas Fahey. I mean, that guy is a guru. I mean, a number of the kinesiology books that most colleges use, he's written one or two of them. So
Damn.
They both told me, they're like, if you can get in at a JUCO, that's where you want to be, because you can actually hone in and focus on coaching and teaching. Because when you get to kind of that upper echelon of education, those 4-year levels, like a D1, a lot of it, you're doing grant writing, so you have teacher's assistants teaching your class and stuff, which is how I started, right? But that's what's nice about this level, is you can really hone in and build a really good relationship with your athletes and your students. So that was something that I really enjoyed, that concept. So I got a chance to come back to my hometown and work at BC, and I took it.
So it's worked out perfectly.
Yeah. Lucked out.
So what are we right now on time?
1:16.
1:16.
Baby on the way, too?
Oh, baby on the
Got
way.
a baby on the way.
Baby girl on the way.
Exciting.
Due December 12th.
Wow.
December, baby. That's okay.
Yeah. Which
you
my
knock all the
wife-
presents out at once.
Yeah. Which my wife hates, because she's December 27th.
Oh.
And she hates it. So she's like, oh, hopefully she comes early, like in November. And I'm like, she's going to come when she's going to come. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Whatever. But no, we're very, very excited. We had tried for probably a little over a year. Mm-hmm. So finally, when it happened, it was pretty exciting.
That is so awesome.
I mean, I can't even imagine the feeling, but I'm sure it's going to be unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. It will be. 100%.
All right, let's just I want to ask you this last question. Just give me, during your prime, back, I don't know, 2015, 2016, what do you eat in a day?
Ooh.
What are you eating in a day?
This is a good one.
Okay, so I'd say in my prime, you're going to be surprised, because I tried to be biggest bang for my buck. Very simple, because back then I didn't have any money. I was a college kid, just trying to get through. So typically first thing in the morning, I would down a carton of egg whites, and I'd usually do oatmeal, with I'd probably do it was around 6 to 8 eggs. That was meal one. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So I'd cook these scrambled eggs, I'd put it in my oatmeal, and, after already chugging a carton of egg whites. And then I'd usually eat, and that's right in the morning when I wake up, right? So, and I'm usually trying to eat every 2 to 3 hours.
Okay.
So
there's breakfast 2 coming up.
There's breakfast 2 coming up, which was usually about 6 to 8 hard-boiled eggs. I lived off eggs because they're cheap and they're nutrient-rich, right? And then sometimes I'd add either top ramen with that or white rice.
You have fun with it a little bit.
With some carbs.
Yeah.
And then I usually do, the protein that I would get for the most part was obviously eggs, whole milk. So I was any protein shake I did had whole milk in it, right? So after that second meal, I'd usually do a shake, because it's getting to a point where it gets hard to put food down.
And how many calories is in that shake?
That one, because my wife was making them at the time, were around 1,200 calories.
Nice.
Shakes. She made these amazing shakes, dude. They were, oh my God, incredible.
Chocolate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but even the vanilla ones, they were amazing, but decked out with calories.
Oh, nice.
Right. So usually then that third meal is a shake. Fourth meal, I'm trying to do it was back then. It was usually, because it was cheaper, it was either ground turkey or chicken. Mm-hmm. So I just pummel a bunch of protein, no carbs. So I was trying to get some kind of meat or poultry in, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes in between, if I could handle it, I'd do like a little snack, either like a sandwich, like a PB&J or turkey sandwich, something like that. Right. And whenever I could do it, fourth meal was usually back to my second meal, which was
Wait,
hard-boiled
is this the
eggs.
fourth or fifth meal? Because the fourth meal was the protein.
Oh, so fifth meal
Fifth meal.
was usually, again, hard-boiled eggs.
Oh my God, so many eggs,
Oh,
dude.
the
Holy
protein
shit.
farts were
Oh, I bet.
unfreaking real. Unreal, dude.
Okay.
Like I'd wipe the house out and we'd be like, all right, we got to go.
Do you just wipe out the fridge after a day?
Pretty close,
the
but
fridge is-
God, I wish I had pictures of my fridge back then, even in college. Because I was lucky to get, like, when I was done competing, some people I knew, because I worked through college, all throughout college, as an athlete, full-time student, right? At one point, I was working 3 jobs. I was a bouncer, I worked at the gym, and I worked at a nutrition store, right? And this is with competing and going to school full-time. How I did that, I could not tell you. I don't know, right? Luckily, I would open up at the gym at 4 a.m., and I was usually heading there straight from bouncing at the bar.
So you want to go to bed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence, my recovery was dog shit.
Living
right?
off of caffeine.
And that's what led off.
Pretty much.
That's what led to the 4 hours of sleep every day.
Pretty much. If I was able,
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing, too, like, I ate like a poor college student for so long I still kind of do it to this day. Now, luckily, like, let's say when it comes to meat, like, I can go, okay, like, I can go get some steak or a tri-tip or whatever. But I hone in on my poor college day eating habits, drinking egg whites, eating hard-boiled eggs, all those things, because they're nutrient dense and I'm getting a bigger bang for my buck. If I'm going to eat that much, right? I mean,
Might as well get a good deal on it.
well, it gets expensive.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, my wife, she loves to meal prep, so I don't have to do any of that. I kind of just barbecue the meat, and she meal preps everything.
That's awesome.
So that makes it a lot easier for me. But if you were to see my meals now throughout the day, very similar to what I was just saying.
So you're still eating 5 meals a day?
Yeah, around there, 4 to 5.
4 to 5.
Now in college, if you include, because usually my last meal was a protein shake.
Okay, so
bed.
that'd be the 6th. That would be the 6th.
But I'd have, the 6th one would be the egg whites again.
Okay.
Then 7th was usually.
Oh shit! There's a 7th.
There's a 7th. Back then, it was usually, honestly, it was either just rice or top ramen. It was just a carb,
Yeah.
right? And then that last meal was another protein shake.
So that totals like the 8.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like after that?
Pretty lethargic.
I don't even know what you do.
You get used to it after a while.
You would have to, right?
And a lot of times I'm burning it throughout the day, just
Uh-huh.
doing everything I was doing. But, half the time it could take me 30 minutes to eat one meal because I'm just like
just slow eating.
choking it down, just trying to get it, in.
It's just a chore.
Yeah.
Literally. And that's what it is. It becomes a chore, and I did that for quite a few years. And, again, I mean, even most recently I weighed up 285 because I just upped my calories again, doing the workout that me and Coach Peters did in August. And then I was like, Sprint Timber came around. I was like, I can't move around this kind of weight.
Yeah.
285.
Yeah, so I dropped 10 pounds relatively quick in probably about 3 weeks. So I'm about 275 right now. But I don't eat as many calories as I used to. I'm probably more around 3,000 to 3,500 now.
So when you were doing the 8 meals, how many calories was that total?
It would usually fall in between 4,500 to 5,500.
Wow.
It would fall in between there.
Okay.
Because obviously, college kid, there's days where, I maybe didn't have the time or I was broke. I had to wait to get paid to,
To buy everything.
to get whatever. And luckily, I had my parents. If I needed money, they'd send me what they could, but I tried not to ask.
Yeah.
I didn't want to always rely on them, but again, I did it, and I did it what I would say relatively cheap.
Yeah.
Again, inflation now, that'd probably even be expensive. But, now I'm probably more around 4 to 5 meals.
And then can you just lay out what your PRs were? Like for
PRs.
each weight,
Yeah.
like a weight thing.
Olympic lifts too,
Yeah.
if you remember those.
Okay.
The heaviest weight you've ever had for each one.
So, heaviest squat was 702. Heaviest dead was 706, so just over that. My heaviest.
What's going on with the 702, 706?
They're kilograms.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times powerlifting they use the Vonco plate, so they're in kilos. So it's an exact number.
Gotcha.
Like I think technically that deadlift was like 706.2 pounds, right? Deadlift or my bench press was 530 point something, 0.8, and these are in competition.
Yeah.
Because I've squatted more in training, but I don't really count those because it wasn't like an official thing. Olympic lifts, I think the most I've ever clean and jerked was 285. That was in college when I was competing up at Chico State, and then snatch, if I remember right, was I think around like 225, maybe 10, 15 pounds more.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Olympic lifting we did a lot as throwers, right? It's a great power output, movement.
I love my Olympic lifts.
Yeah, but
my favorite.
Then when I got into powerlifting,
Yeah,
I didn't
there's
mess
no
with
point.
I didn't mess with Olympic lifts.
Wait, so
really
what was
and
it?
I should have, but I didn't.
What was your deadlift?
Deadlift was 706.
That was okay. And the bench or
The bench was
the
530.
squat was 702. And
702.
I thought deadlifts is more. I thought you do way more than what you would squat.
And that's
Or when
the
you,
thing.
I guess when you get to 700 pounds, it's kind of
and
like
that's kind of funny because, usually people that can squat and, let's say deadlift a lot, usually their bench press is really weak. And that's just, it makes sense, right? It's a smaller muscle group. But I was lucky enough to be pretty well-rounded, because I think the most I actually have deadlifted was 720 something, and that was in training. And like I said, the most I've actually squatted more than 702 again in training. But again, I don't consider those because was I at depth? I don't know.
yeah.
It felt like I was, but I don't know. So I always kind of consider those ones that I got in competition as my actual, the best numbers I've ever hit, which pretty good.
That's insane.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm
that is
seeing
just
kids
nuts.
smoke that now, right? But
Yeah, but they're on the peds.
they're
on the
even,
ped.
well, even if they weren't, they're just stronger. There's just more science to things now that we understand, and I think that's been another big proponent, on why we're seeing some of these younger kids just hit some nasty weight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I saw the polls the other day with baseball. That was pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
Timmy Reese hit 545 for 3. Redstone hit 500 for 3.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because that's
Is that still going? Because does it stop at a minute 30 or an hour 30?
I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, we're at 128.
We're at 120. Okay, I think
We're
that's
almost
You did some real quick. I'm sorry. You did
You're
some strongman competition. Didn't you beat the mountain?
no. I didn't beat the mountain. We
shit.
competed in the same Highland Games in Reno.
Oh, okay.
He was in a even different weight class, and I was an amateur. But we, when I say we competed against each other, I would do, let's say hay bale toss, and then he would go and do it, and that dude is a freaking freak.
Yeah, he's 7 foot, right?
God dang, but he's stronger than shit. And he was super nice, even with his accent and stuff. But he was really cool. Got his autograph, which was awesome. I think I actually had him sign the Highland Game shirt that we got.
Oh, nice.
Speaking of that, I need to find that.
What about Z? You know who that is it's some Russian guy Z.
Z?
It's he has his long last name, but it starts with a Z. But I don't know. I can't say I could not say that guy's
is
name.
He a powerlifter?
Yeah,
or
powerlifter
strongman?
with the mountain. It was they're the main guys. Z was. I don't know. I got to find the name. But
We were watching the strongman the other night.
he might have retired. I
Yeah.
know, yeah, but he was dude, he won it for 10 years straight. He was a stud. I thought it was just Z.
Oh, is it? I know who you're talking about now. Really rocked up dude, shredded.
He's
too,
only
right?
6'3". He's only 6'3".
Yeah, I
but
know.
He's just wide.
I know who you're talking about. Was he? He wasn't Russian, was he?
I don't. It's one of
I
those
don't know.
countries. It's one of those northern.
But it was that guy.
Northern European.
Because didn't
countries.
I think if I'm thinking of the same person, he got into boxing. This is after he retired. It's years after he retired from strongman, but I think he got into boxing.
Did it stop? Oh shit. Okay. Really?
Yeah.
I know Eddie Hall had a little boxing stint.
Eddie Hall. Well, I mean, if you've seen the, Half-Thor Bjornsson, The Mountain Now.
Oh yeah, he boxed Eddie. Yeah,
Good.
Shredded.
I mean, that guy's a freak.
It's
That guy's a
insane.
freak.
And the thing is those strongman guys, like, they're strong, but you got to think of how incredible built athletes they are.
Oh yeah,
Just genetically gifted.
Just, I mean, that, and they're putting in all that work, getting all those calories in and all that training. Because that kind of training, like powerlifting and strongman, it's, most of my gym sessions when, I was competing, they were 2 to 2.5 hours long. They're long, right? Strongman, it's about the same, if not more. you know?
yeah.
I mean, and then they're doing a lot of different functional strength stuff too, So I always deem strongmen, that's why they're called strongmen. They're the strongest dudes in the world.
Yeah.
They're going to smoke the strongest power lifter, the strongest Olympic lifter. They'll smoke them.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe not in those specific lifts, but overall strength, bar none.
Yeah,
Just ridiculous.
it's crazy.
Just ridiculous. I mean, just to put a picture of the mountain and be like, hey, you can be this guy one day. It's like, all right.
Yeah, they got those femur surgeries in Europe. You could grow some inches.
Yeah, maybe.
That'd
Add
be
a little,
nice.
a little inches to your spine.
Yeah.
But I think let's play a song going out. This is a good
Okay.
one. I had a
Okay.
really fun time. Thank
do
you
it.
for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So we already played Domination by Pantera.
Play Walk.
Walk.
That's a good one.
Walk by Pantera.
Okay, so I just want the audience to just think about, you got 600 pounds on your back. You're about to squat. What is it?
Depth, full
Walk by
depth.
what? Walk by Pantera?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Someone slapping your back. Fucking showtime. Let's go.
Yeah, see, this is what they need to play during your guys' warm-up.
Yeah, no, they play some shit.
Some
during our
bullshit.
warm-up. It
Yeah.
fucking, it hurts.
I like
It hurts.
I block that out. I don't even like hear
Yeah,
it.
same.
I block
You
it
have
out.
to.
Yeah,
They were
it's
playing
awful.
Party in the USA. I know. The other day. Like,
Yeah,
it sucks.
I thought that was a Garces thing. I don't know. I guess we do it at BC too. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time, fuckers.
Thank you.
Sweet.